great to see so many of you, and it's great to see new faces as well as familiar faces from the sort of global creation care movement. This is, I think, either the third or fourth year we've done something similar to this early in the year, where put on by World Evangelical Alliance, particularly the Sustainability Centre and the Creation Care side, and the Lausanne Creation Care Network, we've jointly put on a webinar looking at what's on in the next year in terms of some of the big international events, UN conferences, etc., and also in terms of what some of the Christian organizations and churches in this space are planning and are involved in. And the idea is really to share knowledge and information, to avoid us all doing the same thing, to enable us to join in with what others are doing where that's appropriate, and to just make sure that we're all kind of in the same picture. So I'll go through the outline for what we're aiming to do. And we're going to start by looking at a particular issue, which is that of plastics and particularly disposable microplastics. It's something that many organizations, including Tearfund, have been working on. I'm going to do a very, very brief introduction, single slide, on why plastics are an issue for Christians, and then hand over to Lucy Tanner from Tearfund, who's going to talk us through the Global Plastics Treaty and why 2024 is such a significant year for that. So that's our kind of chunky piece of input today. And after that, it's a kind of a round robin. We're going to go around a group of the organizations that are here on this call and share, and we've simply organized it alphabetically. So in turn, I'll be asking Cookie from A Rocha, Rachel Mash from the Anglican Communion, from Green Anglicans, Joylin from Ethicor in India, Jasmine Kwong from the Lausanne Creation Care Network, Deborah Hancox from Micah Global, Dominique from the Oikos Network, Ben Niblett from Renew Our World, and I think Chris Elisar is going to share from World Evangelical Alliance. So that's the plan. If you're not sure what some of those organizations are, hopefully you'll know more by the end of this call. And hopefully there'll be lots of helpful information and I hope inspiration as well from this call. But before we go any further, I think it'd be good to start with prayer. I'm going to share a prayer on the screen, and I invite you to say it with me. Probably mute yourself just so that we don't have a deafening cacophony. But I invite you to join in this prayer with me if you're able to. Prayer for creation. Creator God, giver of life, you sustain the earth and direct the nations. In this time of climate and biodiversity crisis, grant us clarity to hear the groaning of creation and the cries of the poor. Challenge us to change our lifestyles. Guide our leaders to take courageous action. Enable your church to be a beacon of hope and foster within us a renewed vision of your purposes for your world, through Jesus Christ our Lord, by and for whom all things were made. Amen. And we'll go straight into the first, our sort of big subject. Why should plastics matter to Christians? And I've just got a very few things to share on this. And the first point, it's a kind of basic one, but it's important to say it, which is that plastics aren't evil in themselves. They're simply an example of all kinds of technologies and creativity. They're part of what we do, what we as humans make with God's creation. And plastics can do good. And I think it's really important we recognize that we don't demonize all plastics. There are people who would not be alive today were it not for plastic valves and parts of artificial hearts and lungs and other things. There are medical instruments. The communications that we are doing today using the internet, using our laptops and so on, plastics can play an important part in really positive things in our world today. As with so much, this isn't a very simplistic thing of all bad or all good. However, plastics are mainly an oil byproduct, so they're part of the fossil fuel problem. And single-use plastics in particular cause massive problems globally for people and for wildlife. And that sort of somewhat iconic picture of the turtle there is just one illustration of that. But the massive quantity of disposable single-use plastics is a really severe problem in our world today. And that's what we're especially focusing on. This is something I often reflect on, that God made a zero waste creation, or if you prefer, God doesn't do waste. God made a world where everything gets reused and recycled in nature, whether it's plants and trees, whether it's animals, whether it's human beings. Everything eventually goes down to soil and is recreated in some sense. So it's an ever cyclical creation that God has made. It's not a linear one that produces waste that cannot be disposed of. And there is a real sense in which all waste is a byproduct of greed and sin in our lives. And therefore, to minimize waste is, I believe, a spiritual discipline. It's something that's really important for us. And then the final point, our calling as Christians is to seek justice, particularly for the poor and oppressed, and to care for creation. And that calling leads us to oppose single-use plastics and to seek alternatives to fossil fuel-based plastics. So these days, for instance, a lot of plant-based plastics are now being trialed in different parts of the world. So there's lots more that could be said on that subject, but those are just some really basic points to lead in. And I'm now going to hand on straight to Lucy Tanner, who's going to speak to us. And so I will go to the next slide, and it's straight over to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much for doing that little bit of the heavy lifting for me. I asked Dave just to sort of kick off and set the context and go that first step for me, which is often the most difficult step, convincing people why they should be interested in the topic at all. But assuming that Dave has now successfully convinced you all, I will swiftly take over and talk to you about what is very much becoming my specialist subject, the Global Plastics Treaty, and 2024, which, as Dave hinted, is a really key year for this treaty. So hello everyone, I'm Lucy Tanner. I work for Tearfund. I'm based in the UK, but as I'm sure many of you know, we are an international NGO with offices in many countries, continents around the world. I work in the global advocacy team alongside Ben, who is also on this call, and at one point Dominique as well, who was with us briefly. And my focus is, at least last year and this year, on the Global Plastics Treaty, and I'll say a bit more about why that is as we go on. Next slide, please. Great. So picking up on some of the things that Dave was just saying about plastics, to set the context for why we need a treaty. I think the word treaty is fairly well understood, but just to be clear, it's a global agreement, very much like the one that exists already in the climate change space. So I will keep using the word treaty, but we're talking about a written down global agreement which countries will sign up to and then hopefully abide by going forwards. So why do we need one of those? Since the 1950s, we've made 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic. I mean, that's just a number, it sounds big, but to put that into context, that's actually a ton for every person that has been born within that same time frame. So that's a lot of plastic. And logically, it follows that as we've produced more plastic, we've also thrown more plastic away, as Dave said. And the amount of plastic we've thrown away has more than doubled over just the last 20 years. We throw away 50,000 football pitches a day of plastic waste. I don't know if football is the universal language, but there you have it. That's the stat we have, 50,000 football pitches a day being thrown away. And if nothing changes, that figure will triple again between now and 2060. So the scale of the problem is really quite immense. The consequence of this incredible growth in the production and the waste is really where the problem lies. Of that 8.3 billion metric tons that I mentioned earlier, 80% has ended up in landfills, in the ocean, loose in the environment, or openly burnt. So despite what we may be led to believe, actually less than a tenth of that plastic has been recycled. We can't deal with the quantity of plastic we are producing and the quantity of plastic waste we are producing. We can't deal with it in the global north where I'm sat, and we definitely can't deal with it in the global south. You will have heard, those of you who have followed Tearfund will have heard us say many times before, 2 billion people across the world, that's 1 in 4 of us, do not have access to waste management. That means our bins are not emptied regularly, if at all. And for those people, there is little other option available but to dump or to burn the waste. And the consequences of dangerous practices such as those are really severe for the planet and for people. Another favourite Tearfund stat is that 1 person dies every 30 seconds as a result of diseases related to mismanaged waste, including plastic. And as Dave hinted at, plastics is a climate issue as well. So as he said, 98% of single-use plastic products are produced from fossil fuels. Add into that the emissions that come when we burn that plastic waste, as I mentioned, and yeah, the level of greenhouse gas emissions associated with plastic across its life is really quite substantial. And in fact, by 2040, it's expected to be 20% of the global carbon budget. So you really can't talk about climate without talking about plastic. Next slide, please. Just to delve a little more into the impacts on people of plastic pollution, which is really Tearfund's main reason for being involved in this space and in the treaty in particular. This is an image taken from a paper that Tearfund published at the start of the treaty process, which was back in 2022, and it shows how plastic pollution harms people's lives in low and middle income countries. You can see it here polluting the water, the air, the soil, creating that public health emergency I talked about. You can also see it harming agricultural and fishing livelihoods and livelihoods related to tourism as well. If you did want to explore that image in a bit more detail, you can have a look at the report we published, and the links are at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. And so we come to the treaty. How did this treaty come about? It's one thing acknowledging that there is a problem, as we have done, but another thing entirely to agree as the United Nations to do something about it. But believe it or not, in March 2022, that is what happened at a meeting of the United Nations Environment Assembly. A historic decision really was made by all 193 UN member states to take steps to end plastic pollution. And you can see the applause there late one night when that decision was made. It's a fantastic aim. How do the UN envisage that should happen in practice? Well, here we go. The idea is to develop, and I'm sorry for the language, I will simplify it, to develop an international legally binding instrument, a treaty, on plastic pollution, addressing the full life cycle of plastic. That means plastic right from the point it is made until final disposal. It was proposed that this will happen over the course of 5 meetings, known, sorry for more jargon, known as INCs, International Negotiating Committees, that are taking place over the course of 2022 to 2024. That committee have been tasked with developing a text, a treaty text, that can then be signed and adopted by those member states. And in theory, when implemented, that treaty will bring about an end to plastic pollution and its impacts on human health and the environment. Simple when you put it like that. Next slide, please. I mentioned there the full life cycle of plastics, just to sort of give a picture of what that means for people who might not be familiar with that terminology. It really means plastic right from the very moment the fossil fuel is extracted from the ground to make the plastic, all the way through the production and the use of the plastic product, and then ending with the final disposal of that plastic product. And the current draft of the treaty, which I'll talk more about later, has measures in it that will address plastic pollution at all of those stages and more, and also some sort of cross-cutting issues that apply across the piece. But it really is, yeah, it isn't just about waste, I think is the main point to note there. It is about the full life cycle of a plastic product. Next slide, please. Just to situate us in time in terms of this process and to start to talk about why 2024 is such an important year. A few things to take from this little diagram here. The first is that this 2-year time frame is a very short time frame for an instrument, for a treaty rather, of this scope. Whatever the topic, 2 years is not a long time to come to an agreement between such a diverse range of opinions and countries. There are 5 rounds of negotiations in there. You can see them labelled INC 1 through to INC 5. And that might sound like a lot. Each of those is about a week to 10 days. Surely that's more than enough time to draft a treaty. But once you account for all the administrative things that have to happen, the opening statements, which can last a day and a half, the niceties, the things that have to be said at these sorts of gatherings, the geopolitical arguments that are simmering and raising their head from time to time between certain nations, the time is very quickly eaten up. And in addition to that, the period between these meetings, known as the intersessional periods, haven't been used as productively as they could have been due to a lack of agreement between the member states about what work can and should be done in these periods. So we really are up against it here, up against the clock. The key moments this year, as you see, are INC 4 and INC 5, so the last 2 rounds of negotiations, by the end of which there should be a final draft of this treaty to be signed off. That will happen next year at the very grandly titled Diplomatic Conference of Plenipotentiaries. And assuming that happens and that the treaty exists and the treaty is signed, it will then enter into force. Countries will begin to implement it and to be held accountable for doing so or for not doing so. And in terms of meetings at that point, the more familiar rhythm of annual conferences with the parties, COPs, will commence, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, for climate, biodiversity and other issues. So that just situates us a little bit and shows you where we're going. Next slide, please. Yeah, so where are we right now? We are currently between INC 3 and INC 4 in one of those intersessional periods I described. And with 3 rounds of negotiations behind us, we have a 70-page draft text on the table. That's what we have to show for our efforts, which contains numerous options for every single measure that it has in there, and square brackets around the majority of the words in the majority of the sentences. And the problem is that square brackets mean that the text between those brackets has not been agreed by all parties. So to say it in far fewer words, we have 70 pages of text, pretty much none of which has been agreed. I said there are options for each measure. So for example, option 1, option 2, option 3. There is also option 0 for many of the measures. Now option 0 is for there to be no text whatsoever on that particular part of the puzzle. And that's a real threat to an ambitious and effective treaty, which, not surprisingly, is what we're aiming for here. Perhaps it wouldn't surprise you to hear that there is an option 0 for the measures to do with reducing the production of plastics. You can probably guess which countries might be supporting no text in that area. But disappointingly, there are option 0s for a large number of measures in the text, including things that you might think would be reasonably uncontroversial, such as microplastics, eliminating microplastics, that is, product design, non-plastic substitutes. There are option 0s across far more of the text than we would wish to see. There's also ongoing tension between different groups of countries, and this talks to the little cartoon that I've put there. There are those countries with high ambitions for this treaty and those countries with lower ambitions. I'm not going to list those countries. I will leave it to your imagination, but you are intelligent people and you work in the creation care space. I think you can probably fill in the blanks. The High Ambition Coalition, which is a formal grouping, was put together at the start of the process, and there's over 60 governments are members of that, which is hugely encouraging. The like-minded group, who you see represented here, they formed just ahead of INC 3. And although they don't have the same level of formality as the High Ambition Coalition, they are nonetheless dangerous for it. And there is a real need now for the High Ambition Coalition and ambitious countries more generally to really step up and speak out more loudly, more boldly, in a more unified manner to make their voices heard. Next slide, please. Just to talk a little bit more there about the influence of these different groups within the treaty negotiations and really to point at a key area for prayer, I suppose. Just as an illustrative example, at INC 3, which was the last round of negotiations in Nairobi at the end of last year, There were over 1,500 participants, great, representing obviously in large part the governments themselves, but also academia, civil society organisations such as ours, and various other groups you see listed there. Within that group, that number of participants, there were at least 143 fossil fuel and chemical industry lobbyists. That's a 36% increase on the number that were at the previous negotiations. That might not sound like a very big number in the context of the whole group there, but interesting to note that that is more than the number of people there representing the 70 smallest member states. And also important to note that as well as those that we've identified there were also lobbyists as part of official government delegations for 6 countries. And that is to say that they were lobbyists, but their pass around the necks said that they were part of the government delegation from a given country. There is real concern amongst NGOs about the presence of this lobby. And that has been raised repeatedly, sort of with the Secretariat and things. Under this sort of banner of keep polluters out, kick polluters out. But the counter argument is that you can't negotiate a treaty on plastic pollution without having them in the room. I'm not going to provide a commentary on that here, but it is a very important point to note that they are there and that they have an extremely large amount of influence at those negotiations. Yes, I'll leave that point there. Maybe people have questions later on. Next slide, please. I wanted to give a little bit of a sense of what it's like at the INCs, conscious that some of you will have been to international negotiations, to COPs, etc., but others might not have been. And because these are negotiations on a treaty that doesn't yet exist, it's slightly different to a COP where there is a treaty that people are hopefully trying to implement, and we're looking at progress against that. I thought the pictures were quite telling and paint a real picture really of what it's like at these meetings. They are long, intense, crowded, emotionally fraught, late nights, the geopolitics that I referred to. For many delegates, a very real language barrier, which makes life extremely difficult. Nothing happens for hours and then suddenly everything happens within moments. And I think the main point here is to say that for people like ourselves, NGOs like ourselves, who are there trying to lobby, this is the backdrop against which we are doing that. Which poses a huge number of challenges. These people are not, as you can see in these pictures, looking particularly approachable or open to our advances. So if we just go on to the next slide, just to give a bit of a sense of what it's like to be an NGO representative at these negotiations. There is a lot of waiting around, waiting for your opportunity, waiting for the moment. A lot of trying to keep track of what's going on for us and for the negotiators, I think. Basically waiting for those opportunities to be able to get material into delegates' hands, and you can see that happening there in the top left, to have conversations, to build relationships, with a real aim of trying to convince negotiators to put forward our ideas, our language, our wording on our behalf, because as observers, we do not have the ability to do that. In terms of opportunities for advocacy, though, I have to say that there have been plenty throughout this INC process, and space has been made available to allow that to happen. The number of NGOs at the INCs has been growing, along with the number of industry lobbyists, but there we go. There were representatives from just over 300 NGOs at INC3. You can see some of us there in the middle photo behind the Plastic Pollution Kills banner. Another note of caution, though, when you look at the list of NGOs, it does include the likes of the American Chemistry Council and the Chemical and Allied Industries Association, which, by my definition of an NGO, do not quite seem to be in the same space as many of the rest of us. So I don't think it's fair. I think it's fair to say they wouldn't feel comfortable posing in that picture in the middle there. So it really links back to those comments I made earlier about kicking polluters out of the negotiations and who ought to really be able to have influence in that space. Next slide, please. There are 2 slides here which I'll just speak to very briefly, just to give a flavour of the opportunities for advocacy there. As I said, there have been lots of opportunities provided. These are the opportunities that exist in between the INCs in those intersessional periods. pre-session submissions. I know a few of you here have been involved in these. I know Rachel certainly has been. Rachel Mash, sorry to embarrass you, Rachel, but she has. Multi-stakeholder forums, organised both for the whole treaty space, but also between specific governments and NGOs in their countries. A whole plethora of webinars, such as this one. This is one of the more interesting ones, I promise you. And also the opportunity for NGOs to produce their own policy briefs, publications, etc., and share those with delegates. And then just briefly looking at the next slide at the INCs themselves, there are the opportunities to have face-to-face time with delegates, and that can be through targeted engagement that you've planned and organised in advance of going to the INCs. It can be at the side events that are hosted, both official and unofficial, and you could be a speaker there, or you could be a panel, someone just asking a question from the audience. There's the opportunity within the confines of what's allowed at these UN events to carry out stunts. Not protests perhaps, but stunts. The line there is perhaps a bit blurred. And there are many, many opportunities for chance encounters, which are one of my favourites and have certainly proven to be one of the most fruitful opportunities that I've come across. And just as we come into land, on the next slide, a few highlights from Tearfund's advocacy so far. I'm not sure, it's quite small on my screen, hopefully it's a little bit bigger. You can see various documents here being handed to various people who you may not recognise, but trust me, are important in the context of the treaty negotiations. The gentleman in the top left in the red tie is in fact the chair of the committee negotiating the treaty. In the middle there on the top row, we have Dr. Twangigawa, who's an academic, a senior academic, and also a Tearfund campaigner from Malawi. She's come with us to INC 2 and 3 and will also be with us at INC 4. And she's done a great deal of media with some very high profile media outlets, as well as some more local and specialised ones. And at the bottom there, you can see a group of people dressed as lifeguards. And if you're particularly eagle-eyed, you'll be able to tell where that is, because that's the Eiffel Tower in the background. This was a stunt we organised at INC 2 in Paris to draw attention to the impact of plastic pollution on flooding. And we have more planned for the rest of the year. I'm not going to give an update later, but the Plastics Treaty really is our Tearfund's focus for the rest of the year in terms of climate care space. We have a fun action targeting the High Ambition Coalition. As I said before, they need to be speaking more loudly and in a more unified manner in these remaining INCs. So we'll be launching an action in a couple of weeks' time to do with that, and you can find out more about that on our website and social media nearer the time. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, really, and really just an opportunity to ask humbly for your prayers for ourselves and for other NGOs from the faith community and beyond, as we're ramping up our advocacy and lobbying efforts in this final year of negotiations. And really the prayer is for this to be a treaty that has justice at its heart and that will make a real difference to the lives of people living in poverty. Thank you for your time. On the last slide, which I'm sure you'll see when the slides are circulated, don't worry about scribbling it down now. There are some links which might be useful to you to do with both the INCs itself and the sort of official side of things, a couple of publications we've put out, and some things to do with our campaign as well. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that was interesting. I realise that treaty negotiations are slightly dry and boring by their very nature, but I hope that gave you a flavour, and now you don't ever have to have anything more to do with them again. Consider yourself informed. Happy to take any questions. Thanks, Dave.
Lucy, thank you so much. That was so clear and concise, and you got through so much material. I think we've got a few minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes for questions. If you're able to raise a hand, that's probably the most helpful way of doing that. If you look along the reactions button at the bottom, then there's a raise a hand icon there. And I should be able to see if you raise your hand, if you've got a question. While others are maybe working out how to raise their hands, I'll ask you a question, Lucy, which is, you talked about if and when this treaty gets agreed and implemented in 2025, you talked about how it would be kind of policed. That wasn't the word you used, but so if it's agreed and countries sign up to it, how do we stop a country or a business within a country that is failing to do what they should in terms of the treaty? What teeth does it have?
Excellent question. It doesn't have any teeth yet because it hasn't been agreed and signed. And this is one of the main areas where there will be ongoing debate and controversy right up until the gavel goes down at the end of the final negotiations, I expect. Not just what are the measures that are in the treaty, but as you say, how will they be policed? So the answer is we don't know yet. There are various shades of grey, but essentially the black and white is either it is a completely legally binding treaty whereby every country signs up to the same legally binding measures, or it is a framework treaty where everybody agrees to the principles, but then they go home to their individual countries and write their own national action plan as to how they will achieve those aims, and they do that completely independently, and their level of ambition there could vary considerably. It is likely that the answer will be somewhere in between. It won't surprise you to hear, and that it may vary from measure to measure. So it may be that some measures there is a very clear legally binding obligation, whereas other measures it is left more for countries to decide what they want to do. The problem that NGOs such as ourselves face, who work with developing countries, lower middle income countries, the global south, whichever phrase people prefer to use, I realise there's a whole range of terminology there. There does need to be some space for countries to decide what works best for them in their contexts and in their settings. But there also can't be any space for sort of different levels of ambition and for certain countries to wrangle their way out of their responsibilities. You can imagine, again, which countries might sit in that category. It's really very similar challenges to those in the climate space. And the hope is that we can learn lessons from the Paris Agreement and the implementation thereof. But it remains to be seen whether we will learn the lessons of history or not. I don't know if that completely answered your question, but that's
that helped. That's really
where
helpful.
we are.
Matthias, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Lucy, for this excellent presentation. Two questions, one more in the technical realm of global politics. You referred to the fact that this might lead into another stream or sequence of COPs, because if it becomes this treaty, to my knowledge, it will be on the same level like UNFCCC, the climate treaty, if you want, or UNCCD, the land treaty, so under UNEP. And then we will also see annual COPs. Is that correct? Because that might, for many organizations, including ours, be an important thing, because then you need to sort of plug that into your annual event calendar. The second question is more far off this level of global politics. If you could maybe talk to how churches can link into this. I mean, there are so many thematic links where we can say there's a poverty link, of course. Yeah, the topic of waste pickers around the world has an implication in this regard, or if you look at it from the biodiversity perspective, where Christians can easily link in, because every day we see also parts of God's creation destroyed forever, also because of the waste problems. So and I know Tirfan has wonderful material on that. To get churches going and congregations and groups and cell groups to work with this. So that would be my second question. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you. Yeah, so you're exactly right in terms of the COPs. I don't know exactly when that will precisely kick off. It depends when we finish the treaty and when this diplomatic conference of plenipotentiaries happens. But yes, after that, as I understand it, it will be annual COPs. One assumes that they'll be organised, well, not to clash with COP as we all think of it. But then again, there may be a decision to hold all of those things quite closely together, as they already do with climate and biodiversity. The first couple of COPs will be it's easy to say, isn't it? The first couple of COPs will be particularly important because it's likely that a number of things that in an ideal world would have been dealt with during the negotiation process will be put off and left to COP1 and COP2, because the controversy surrounding the measures we've got to get over the line in this treaty is such that it is unlikely we will have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Sorry, that's a bit of an English metaphor, isn't it? But you know what I mean. Dealt with all of the detail we need to. So I think COP1 and COP2 will in some ways be an extension of the negotiation process, whereby the content of the treaty has been agreed, but there are lots of things to do with annexes, implementation, the committees that will be set up that still need to be decided. So that will be an interesting space. And then at some point after that, it will settle more into the sort of thing we're used to with the environmental COPs. Although again, hopefully we can avoid some of the pitfalls in terms of host nations and climate footprint, etc. In terms of resources, in terms of churches getting involved, I was told not to plug Tearfund. Well, no, I wasn't told not to. I was reminded this is not a Tearfund advert, but you did that for me, yes. As Matthias said, we do have a range of resources on our website via the Rubbish Campaign link that was on my final slide. And I am fairly sure that other organisations have those resources too. But yeah, I mean, it's churches as units in themselves, and what you can do as congregations to reduce your own waste, in whichever context you are. And there are great things that can be done there, and the church can then be an example to the community around it. But it's also praying and standing with our brothers and sisters in Christ around the world who, as Matthias was saying, are suffering in many different ways as a result of plastic pollution. And in part of our campaign, we've seen some great work going on, particularly in Latin America, parts of Africa, to be fair, on most continents, particularly Latin America. I think at the moment they're top of my list, doing some great work churches there, both in terms of reducing their own plastic footprint. To be fair, it usually goes hand in hand with reducing their general carbon footprint, and then also reaching out within their neighbourhoods, particularly those churches located within neighbourhoods where plastic pollution is a real issue. Thinking about the church in Recife in Brazil, where there's been lots of flooding, which has been exacerbated by plastic pollution. So the traditional role of praying for our brothers and sisters around the world who are suffering, but also doing things much closer to home to make a difference in our communities and our own lives. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lucy. That was absolutely brilliant. We're going to have to move on because we've got quite a lot of other speakers to cover now. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, and I'm going to invite first Kuki Rookham from A Rocha International to share. And the idea is each of these folks who are going to share now will share for about 5 minutes. So let's see how we manage.
Hello, everybody, and it's indeed a privilege for me to be able to share on behalf of A Rocha International. I shared last year as well, but on behalf of another organization. And I, as David said, I am going to share what we're going to do in A Rocha International. But I do want to say that we have A Rocha organizations in more than 20 countries around the world. So there's lots of A Rocha events and activities that are going to happen during the year, but I will talk only about A Rocha International. I serve in A Rocha International as the newest member of staff as Director of Church Engagement. And here's what we have in store this year. In church theology, events and resources, one of the things that we're doing is books. And with Renew Our World, Dave Bookless, who works for A Rocha International as the head of theology, has written a book called Making a World of Difference, which was launched in COP last year, and that's made available. And we have been at the heart of this, and we are promoting this and working with organizations across the world so that this can be used widely. Well, brace yourself for a new book by The Whole Easter Story by Joe Swinney for Lent 2025. And this includes theology around creation care and the cross, and a group study Bible guide is also being written, and it'll be available by autumn. In events, we are at the heart of helping in the 4th Lausanne Congress in Seoul in 2024, especially in terms of creation care. And Dave Bookless, who serves with Jasmine Kwong as the global catalyst on creation care. Post Lausanne, we're also organizing a creation care gathering, and I think we'll give you more information about that as progress is made on this event. And we would invite lots of people to be there, because you may not be able to be there at the Lausanne Congress, but this is an event that we could come together. A Rocha International is also planning to increase in church engagement with the post of Director of Church Engagement, me. And hopefully we will have in this year more webinars, newsletters, prayer initiatives, and supporting countries in their church engagement growth plans. We're also hoping to launch a resources hub on creation care, which we launched by May 2024. And we also want to start planning to develop short online courses on creation care and church engagement, which will be made available to all of you. In our outreach and expansion, one of the things that A Rocha believes in is working with others mutually, with respect, and making a difference in the world. And so that's where we have the Friends of A Rocha network, which is growing around the world. And this is a little map of where our growth is. And so A Rocha International wants to walk alongside other Christian groups interested in biodiversity in their creation care journey. And we will have even more friends during this year, so watch out. We're also going to have our annual environmental education conference and EE teachers workshops in A Rocha Kenya's Mwamba Center in Watamu in June. And so there's a lot of things that are written here that you can read that are going to be talked about in here, including talking about the CBD COP16. And participants will also have the opportunity to visit A Rocha Kenya's partner schools, communities, the FMNR projects, and the sustainable livelihood activities in local marine, mangrove, and forest areas in Watamu and Dakacha. So this is a big event that is coming for us, which we're very excited about. We also have the growth of A Rocha India Center, who are appealing for funds to purchase land to be converted into a private protected area with a thriving regenerated forest rebuilt with native species. So this is one of the activities that we're looking forward to as well. A Rocha is also hoping to expand in the Southeast Asia region, where we have very limited presence, except for our friends network, who are amazing. We're trying to establish the presence and work of A Rocha in the Southeast Asia region, and an advertisement is out for a regional coordinator to be based in Singapore, Malaysia region. So if you know someone or if you think you are that person, please do apply. In our conservation sector, we are coming up with this really exciting project, which encompasses the 5 C's, or the 5 core commitments of A Rocha, which is Christian, conservation, community, collaboration, and cultural diversity. So we have written this project called Empowered Citizenship, a faith-based approach for global landscape and seascape conservation. And it is just bringing together our practical conservation work with church engagement. And the plan is that it'll be in 10 scapes across 6 continents in these 10 different countries. And we have been we have made it through to the preliminary round of the Earthshot Prize. And so we hope that if this is granted to us, we'll be making a huge difference in these 10 scapes, and hopefully we will be able to replicate that in other areas as well. And one of our flagship programs, the African Forest Program, continued to work to protect 218,000 hectares of forest in Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, and South Africa. And we're exploring possibilities of collaboration with our Friends Network in other countries across Africa to increase this as well. So this is our plan as A Rocha International. Do pray for us. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everybody, and great to be with you. And before I start, I just want to say thank you to Lucy for her presentation and for her work. The Tearfund team actually managed to get the waste pickers into the plastic treaty. I remember they were very involved with advocacy and talking, and I think it was the Brazilian government that they managed to get waste pickers in. So thank you very much for your work in advocacy. So what are some of the things that we're doing as the Anglican Communion? During Lent, we are having a 40-day cleanup, different action for every day, looking at cleanups, environmental education, understanding about plastic, reducing your own personal plastic. Next slide. And then going on to United Nations Environmental Programme, the Environmental Assembly is taking place in Nairobi at the end of this month, and 3 of us will be attending, representing the Anglican Communion. The United Nations Environmental Programme they're very open to civil society. It's quite different in some ways from the COP, the climate change COP, and they recognise the role of the major groups. Just this afternoon, I attended an online meeting, and I was able to make a comment regarding seabed mining. So they do, if you just like to go back, Dave, they do recognize the role of civil society, and they do make space for us to speak. And there's a really good organization called Faith for Earth, which encourages faith organizations to register. So it's a really good way to be involved in advocacy if you'd like to get involved in that. And then we're hoping to send, as part of the Tearfund team, Reverend Dennis from Kenya, hopefully might go to Canada for the plastic treaty. And I just put this sign up. This is what the sign that you see when you go into the UNEP. It says Karibuni, which says welcome. And I feel like they are welcoming of civil society. Next one. So Green Anglicans of Africa, it's a growing movement now present in 13 different countries. Last year we had an eco-theology online course, which had speakers from 12 different African countries, and we had about 80 or 90 people, and we're now putting together some of their homeworks into a small eco-theology resource, which we're excited about to hear their voices of emerging theologians. And then the Church of Uganda is also sending the Bishop of Kampala to Kenya on a benchmarking visit to see if they would like to adopt Green Anglicans in Uganda as well. So excited for that. Next one. And then Season of Creation, that's a major, major focus for us. The theme is now out, and it's to hope and act with creation. So we do encourage people to get involved in the Season of Creation. And in March, we're going to be involved in a really exciting ecumenical seminar in Assisi. In a nutshell, the Season of Creation idea came from the Orthodox Church, and we've tended to celebrate it as an environmental day. But in the Orthodox Church, the Day of Creation is the start of their church year. So there, it is a Christological festival, and you start with creation, and then you go on to the birth of Jesus, and then you go on to the death of Jesus, which is much more logical that we start with creation. So that ecumenical seminar is all about how can we mainstream the Season of Creation into our church years and into our theology ecumenically. Next one. And then COPs, the Anglican Communion, will probably send a small delegation to COP29, but we are recognizing that it's the work that we do between the COPs that is most important. And we're encouraging people to follow their country's commitments. There's a great website called Climate Action Tracker where you can see, is your country a yellow or a red or a green, and see how you can put pressure on your country. And then we're also promoting the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which you can do as a parish, as a city, as a country, to say we say no to any more fossil fuel projects. And then we have a group who will be attending the Convention on Biological Diversity in Colombia. Next one. And then the Communion Forest is a vision that was launched at the Bishops' Conference in Lambeth. And it's quite a simple idea. It's just connect your faith with tree growing and forest restoration. Whether it's a baptism, a wedding, a confirmation, a patronal festival, a birthday, plant trees and link it with those acts. And then we're also encouraging dioceses in the rural areas to set up nurseries. And it's a really exciting project just to see how across the Anglican Communion people have got excited about linking tree growing and reforestation with their spirituality. Thank you so much.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Joylyn, and I am joining from India, and I work with EFICOR. So we count it a great privilege that we have been invited to speak here among all the global organizations to just talk about what we plan to do in India as far as creation care is concerned. So just giving you a slight context about India. So last year, we saw extreme weather events. India saw extreme weather events. On 86, sorry, did I? Dave? I cannot see the PPT. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, definitely. You just don't
see
the slides.
Yeah. I think just the screen sharing stopped, Joylyn. Probably you can just go on, and the screen will come back in a second.
Okay, thanks. So we, organization that work in the grassroots level, we've been firsthand the impact that climate change has on the poorest of. So I think that's something really is close to our heart, and we want to continue to challenge and engage our Christian community in India to engage in creation care. For now, it is very minimal. The engagement of the churches in Indian creation care is very minimal. So I think as we foresee a lot more extreme weather events even in 2024, and the engagement from churches being minimal, this is something that we really want to focus in 2024. So next slide, please. So beginning with June, June 5th being the World Environmental Day, we have lots of opportunities to do some work here. So we're going to leverage that. We will have the Eco Sunday observance, where we put in some resources for churches in India in our context, modified for our context, that they can use to observe a Sunday in their churches. Just praying and talking about creation care. We will also have community-led environmental celebrations, different events planned across our projects in India that we work with at the ground root. So another thing that we want to do this year, which we tried last year and was very meaningful, was to recognize our waste warriors. So this is a picture that you see of our team. We just went across to the dump yard near our office, and we just recognized them, thanked the waste warriors, those who collect and manage waste, separate waste, the informal sector really. So just being able to acknowledge their contribution, so that was very meaningful, and we want to continue to do that this year as well. So if you're interested in joining us in this whole multiple events that we will do in June, please get in touch with us, even if you're interested to get the resources that we put for reflection. Next slide, please. Okay, so another thing that we want to focus on in 2024 is really engaging the children and youth. So far, we've only worked with adults in churches. So last year, we did a pilot of just getting some people who are interested to work with children. So we did a training of trainers for children engagement in creation care, which was quite effective. So we hope to expand that this year, where we will get people to be trained to engage children in caring better for the creation. We also want to build a youth movement really this year of bringing some young leaders who are passionate for this, and so we can train them, coach them, mentor them, and they will go and work with the youths in their churches and their regions. So this is something we are planning to do at the national level. So if you're an organization in India or in this region who are wanting to maybe focus on youth, or somebody who will be interested in this, please get in touch with us. We also invite prayers as we try this for the first time in EFICOR. Next slide, please. Okay, so as an organization, having worked in India for over 50 years, we understand the need to work with the government. It's necessary, but it's also very effective. So we've been coming up with these district climate resilience plan, as you can see in the local languages for different districts in India where we work, where we have our project presence. So what this plan is, basically we get the community together and they share their voices on what they want to do, what are the challenges they face, and what they can do, what they would like the government to do. So it's basically a plan, resilience plan, that we try to bridge between the government and the community. So we put this plan together with other partners like CANSA and UNICEF. And this year also we hope to do that for 4 more flood-prone districts in Bihar of India. And of course, we will be at the COP this year. So the picture there on the extreme left, you can see is we were able to put up a platform in the COP last year, where just bringing our voices from the community. So this is one of the Indian delegates who visited and just heard the stories from our organization. So that is something that we hope to continue to do this year as well. This is a picture of our executive director with the Environment Minister of India. So we've been able to meet him in COP and also back when we came to follow. We've had some follow-up meetings with him. I think we'll continue to do. Next slide, please. Okay, I cannot see the next slide, but so we will, of course, continue to work with our churches. This is something that EFICOR is very passionate about. So small little independent churches spread across India, so doing their part in caring for creation. So we'll continue to teach them, to walk with them, support them as they do the little they can to better care for God's creation. So this is some pictures from last year. Some of our trainees who attended our training programs have gone back, worked with their churches. There's some cleaning of ponds, beach cleanup, plantations, cleaning up the rivers. So these are small little actions that we'll continue to do through our churches, church engagement. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, of course, we will continue to collaborate with organizations who share the same vision. So Climate Action Network, South Asia Cancer. So we'll work with them, especially working with the government in bringing out the District Climate Resilience Plan. So we'll be working with them. And this year, we hope to also co-publish the Making a World of Difference booklet that Renew Our World has brought out. So maybe translating it in Hindi, that's something that we are talking about. Also, I think in the Lausanne South Asia Regional Conference, there were some discussions in the Creation Care group about starting a South Asia Creation Care Network. So we're looking forward to be part of that as well. So these are our plans. And if you're in this region, we would love to work with you. And even if you have some inputs that you can give with youth movement building, anything that is worth sharing, please contact me. My contact details is here. So thank you very much for this time.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from Manila, Philippines. My name is Jasmine. I'm one of the catalysts for Creation Care in the Lausanne movement, along with Dave Bookless. And another hat that I wear is I am a Creation Care advocate with OMF International. And so within Lausanne, we have this network that is called the Mission Agencies and Creation Care Network, which formed a couple years ago. OMF is also part of that, as well, along with other traditional mission agencies, where we come together to discuss various topics that help to encourage one another and deepen and integrate this issue within our respective organizations. And we share resources, we bring others in, and we pray together. So this has been a really good space for representatives from different agencies who are really exploring how to go deeper within this. And we are still looking to grow this, to continue to bring in other agencies. So if you are part of a group or are aware of other agencies who don't know yet about this group, do let them know that we exist. We do meet once a month, and we alternate between topical discussions and prayer. Two other things that I want to talk about today, which Cookie spoke about briefly earlier. The first one is the 4th Global Congress, which is going to be happening later this year in Seoul, South Korea, for that last week of September. Information about what has been going on through the process and whatnot, you can find more information on those websites. But essentially, a lot of the applications for those who are attending is already well underway. One of the differences at this coming year is that they are planning to have quite a significant additional number of people in person, but now also participation online. And so they're calling this a pre-Congress participation. And a lot of people already joining online virtually just to gather and to meet and discuss. And just very briefly to let you know, from the Creation Care side, we are aware that there are going to be some moments where this issue is going to come in to the Congress. So for example, we will have the first evening of the Congress where there will be various global issues addressed, and that will actually be the first evening that Creation Care has a moment. They are designating afternoon sessions during the Congress for this time to cover what they are calling the 25 gaps. There's a document that will be coming out later this year that's called the State of the Great Commission Report. And within that document, there are 25 gaps that are named, and creation care is actually named there under caring for creation and the vulnerable. So there will be discussion times during the Congress where these issues will be discussed along with 24 other gaps. So stay tuned to find out a little bit more about content, and also we pray with us as we love to see creation care itself have a much more integrated focus within the Congress itself, especially following the Cape Town meeting in 2010. And finally, we are going to have a global creation care forum immediately following the Seoul Congress. So when the Seoul Congress finishes on September 28th, we plan to have this starting potentially the evening of the 29th for a few days afterwards. So we don't yet have a venue confirmed, so please stay tuned. We will be welcoming people within these communities to be part of this. This will be a chance to gather one another from respective organizations, and especially to influence the global church when it comes to creation care and mission. If you're interested to find out more information about any of the three things that I just mentioned, feel free to contact me at the email there. Otherwise, stay tuned for the LWCCN Pollinator newsletter that comes out monthly. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Hancox, and I'm the Global Director of MICA. It's wonderful to be with you all today, and I'm speaking to you from my home in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm going to give a brief overview of MICA Global and then talk to 2 points at which MICA is seeking to promote a creation care agenda. So MICA Global, or MICA, is a global network whose members are active in humanitarian development, creation care and advocacy work. When we were formed over 25 years ago, it was really humanitarian and development work and advocacy work under the MICA challenge, but we've brought creation care into one of the 4 main pillars of the focus of our network. Thank you, Dave. Next, please. Our members are Christians who are called in various ways to usher in the flourishing life that God offers to all creation, human and other. Thank you. MICA is a very diverse and beautifully multifaceted network made up of organizations in the global north and the global south, stretching across many different types of organizations, which you can see listed there, and also individual members. That's one of the things that we hold on to, is this global diversity. And in the mix, we also have creation care organizations such as A Rocha. Thank you. Why do people belong to MICA? Because they're seeking a place to enact solidarity, learning, action, and reach beyond their geographic and organizational boundaries, and all for greater kingdom impact. Thank you. Our vision is an inspired and collaborative Christian faith creating a just, compassionate, and sustainable world. Thank you. Our mission, which has been persistent in very much the same way since our founding, is that we exist for the strengthening of sectoral work, obviously including the sector of creation care and its impact within a missional framework. That term integral mission very much associated with us and our members and history. Our second focus area is the strengthening of the church for participation in acts of justice and mercy. And the third is around advocating against issues causing poverty, oppression, marginalization, conflict, and environmental crises. Thank you, Dave. So just to talk briefly about 2 points that I wanted to highlight in terms of MICA and creation care. The first, gosh, your headings disappeared there. I wonder what happened. Okay, never mind. The first is around the environment in which we create the network. I'm just calling up my slides so I can see. So MICA, as I said, is a very diverse network, and it creates diverse and convened spaces. So we have forums and we have groups. The various forums are on-site or online, and we create spaces where members come together and provide the leadership to have conversations, learning, spiritual engagement around topics of their choice. And we have groups which are thematic groups, such as humanitarian response, disability inclusion, advocacy, and others. We have country groups and we have regional groups which come together and are represented on an online platform, the MICA Hub, which we're in the process of rolling out. And all of this is coordinated from the Secretariat and with governance by the MICA board. So the point in showing you this is to say that MICA is this space where members can come and convene under a common name and under shared agendas that bring intersection between the different topics that members are working on. So, for example, we were having a human trafficking discussion the other day, and people were talking about, you know, within climate crisis areas, you'll see an increase in human trafficking. And someone else was talking about the struggles that people with disability, as the most vulnerable, often also increasingly suffer through the climate crisis. So it's about being able to bring that intersect of different issues. And then, thank you, Dave. And this other area is about working into the intersect specifically of climate resilience and humanitarian action. MICA and many of its members have a long history in disaster response, or what we now call humanitarian response. And what we're seeing is the need to empower our members and for members to be empowering one another to target shared concerns of the area of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So, you know, with disaster risk reduction, talking about risks of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, chemical spills, in terms of climate change adaptation, facing the issues of sea level rise, air temperature increase, snow melt, etc. And where those two intersect, you have that increased frequency or intensity of climate, which is particularly targeting the most vulnerable in many of our global south contexts related to, for example, floods, storms, droughts, and landslides. And so what we're seeking to do is to bring together the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation focus under the prevention component of the disaster management cycle. And obviously that also links into development. So, you know, with the expertise already within the disaster management space, to be increasing the skills and understanding of climate change adaptation as part of the prevention cycle. And I think that was my last slide, was it, Dave? Oh, just one more, I think. Just to say that if you're not a member of MICA Global and you'd like to know more, or if you are a member of MICA Global and you'd like to pick up on any of these issues, please just contact us in the Secretariat. Easiest thing is to email info@micaglobal.org, and your email will be directed to the relevant person. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks so much, Deborah. I'm going to hand on now to Dominique, who's sharing her screen and is going to share about Oikos. Over to you, Dominique.
Hello, my name is Dominique, and I'm the Oikos Network Coordinator. The Oikos Network, its purpose is to bring people together who are tackling the environmental crisis in their churches and communities. And so what we want is to bring people together so that they can share their learnings and encourage each other to continue fighting against climate change. And so the members of the Oikos Network are most organizations that have talked today: Arrocha, Lausanne, the Anglican Alliance, Tearfund, MICA, and Renew Our World. How it works basically is we have we've been working since 2021, and they're always the participants are divided into little groups, and for a period of 6 months the groups meet once a month and read from the Bible about creation care, reflect together, share experiences, and encourage each other to continue tackling the environmental crisis. And so we also have two plenary sessions for each cohort. And the ones for this cohort were about engaging the Church for Creation Care, which was led by Cookie. And the next one is going to be about the abundant community theology. And so just for you to know, we also have on our website useful resources about creation care. So if you're interested, please visit our website. Just a little graph on this cohort, which we have 84 participants from 37 countries. And so we hope we continue growing with our next cohort. And so a little testimony from Jasmine, from whom we have already heard today, as she shared how inspiring it was to learn from others and learn together about creation care. And so for next cohort, I just wanted to share this little invitation to sign up to get our updates and to receive the invitation to be part of the next cohort. So you can visit this link. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Niblett. I'm the Renew Our World coordinator. Renew Our World, as lots of you know because you're already involved in it, is an international Christian movement for a fairer and more sustainable world. We're active in 21 countries, covering every continent, and there's a huge range of diversity in all of that. And if you're not involved yet, you'd be more than welcome to become involved. You'd be more than welcome. Next slide, please. Yes, so lots of people have already mentioned the Making a World of Difference book. Now, it's a beautifully written book, and that's because Dave Bookless is the lead author. It's also a beautifully presented book. We had a talented designer. And it's a beautifully collaborative book because it's had the voices of more than 20 people around the world contributing to it, ideas, stories of what the church is doing, making this a fully international collaboration. So it's available online at renewourworld.net/making, and members of Renew Our World are also co-publishing it and hosting it on their websites and translating it. It is published in English. It's shortly going to be published in Portuguese, and then coming out soon after that are Croat, French, Laos, Slovak, Spanish, Thai, and as we heard from Joylyn, Hindi is coming after that. If you're interested in co-publishing it and translating it, you'd be more than welcome. Please speak to me or another Renew Our World member. But what this book is it's aimed at local church leaders who are interested but are not sure of the facts and not sure of the theology and maybe short of time to find out. So it's a simple, engaging, easily written read that sets out what is the climate and the nature crisis? What are the facts? How does it fit with the other signs of our times in the world that we're in that's getting more polarized and more unequal? It's got study questions to provoke thought, and it's got a Christian understanding of the theology of the earth being the Lord's and everything in it. Here is Dave with the very first printed copy of the book as the lead author. Here are some other, here's Jessica Bwali from Zambia, Vanessa Nakate, the famous activist from Uganda, at the book's launch at COP29. So I commend the book to you. Enjoy. Next slide, please. Promoting the book is one of Renew Our World's main activities this year. One of the others is going to be COP29 in Azerbaijan. We were at COP28. COP29 is another petrostate-led and hosted COP, but it's still worth engaging with. You can see those towers in the shape of gas flames in Baku there. We came out of COP28 with more momentum than I expected on a transition away from fossil fuels. We urgently need to keep that up at COP29. We came away with more money than I thought we would get, an agreement to a new loss and damage fund. We need to continue the momentum on getting money, transfers from rich countries that caused most of the climate problems we're in, to the poorer ones that need that money if they're going to reduce their emissions and adapt. Those things are always top at every COP, really. They certainly will be at this one. There is momentum to carry forward. But this may not be a landmark COP in the way that the COP after it, COP30 in Brazil, will be. In the year coming up to COP30, each country in the world needs to produce its climate plan. The role of COP29 is accelerating that and building the momentum towards them. It's really important the Church does that together. I've just booked an Airbnb in Baku with space for 8. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. And I'm going to stop sharing now because Chris Elisara from WEA is going to share next. And I think Chris is going to share without slides. So over to you, Chris. I'm hoping we've got Chris still with us.
Yes. Hope you're feeling encouraged and informed. They go together. The information that we're sharing globally is really encouraging my heart. It's the purpose of this this gathering, this meeting. And I just want to share a few things that we're doing at the WEA. Many of the things that we do in partnership have already been mentioned. So I'm just going to hit on a few things, and I got to put in the chat just the main points and links to the things that I wanted to talk about. First is I co-direct the WEA Center with Matthias. Matthias will talk after me really briefly. We have a little combination with the faith pavilions. He's going to talk about the faith pavilion that we did with other partners at COP28. And I'm going to talk about Christian placemaking, first of all, as a space that we're working in. And there was a couple of projects I want to mention that are helping us to focus our work together with other partners. There's a new initiative that I'm leading called Faith for Cities, and the link is there. It's a multi-faith initiative because it's a UN-focused initiative, which requires it to be multi-faith. But we are leading that, and the main goal in the long run is to develop, as you'll see in the title, something equivalent to what is happening at UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, where we have mainstreaming faith through the Faith for Earth program, a mainstreaming faith initiative through at UN Habitat. So UN Habitat is the agency at UN focused on cities and sustainable development in cities. And so we hope to have a Faith for Cities initiative there, mainstreaming faith at that really important agency. Faith for Cities is really kind of kicking that off. We're working to develop a program that will partner in parallel with an initiative called SDG Cities. So you can look at that. UN Habitat has every 2 years, it doesn't have a COP, but it has a World Urban Forum. So we're at the 12th World Urban Forum, and we'll be attending there. And hopefully we'll have the very first faith pavilion there, where we can do our faith programming on a platform that gives us an opportunity to speak from our perspectives about faith and cities and urban development. So our pavilion would be exciting. We did a faith pavilion at COP15, the CBD COP in Montreal last year or 2 years ago, I think. And so this is another development of these faith pavilions. And Matthias will talk about the one that occurred at COP28. So a faith pavilion focused on cities. So put this on your calendar and try to get to that. Connect with that through Faith for Cities initiative. We have 3 convenings coming up in the Faith for Cities initiative, one on data, one on design and planning, and one on finance and project development. Again, you're all welcome to be involved in those. You'll see information coming online at the Faith for Cities initiative. Moving on, 29 in Baku has been mentioned, but I just want to mention a program that we do in collaboration with other organizations called CCOP, or Christian Climate Observers Program. It's been running for 3 or 4 years, and really we use the crucible of a COP to train leaders, global leaders, focus really on youth as well, but global leaders to engage in the climate crisis. So CCOP is a program that you apply for, and we get passes, and you can come to COP. So COP 29 in Baku would be an opportunity for those that are in your network who want to go further in their climate leadership. Check into CCOP. At the center, we have added a new person to our team, Julia Buckingham. Julia comes from a deep food systems background. She's Canadian, and her first job was to do a white paper focused on food systems. We did a statement, a multi-faith statement on food systems for the UN Food Systems Summit. I think it was 2021. When we do these multi-faith statements, we also like to do a Christian statement that can go deeper into the issues from our faith perspective, our Christian perspective. That didn't happen for the Food Systems Summit. So we're kind of backfilling that, and hopefully we'll have a statement. But we're going to start with a white paper first of all. So Julia's going to be heading that. And then we're going to continue to work on and finish a Bible study resource on the SDGs, which we started last year, but we'll be finishing sometime this year and make that available to this global community. So those are a few things I wanted to mention. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Matthias to talk about the Faith Pavilion regarding COPs, the climate COPs.
Yes, thanks, Chris. Hello from my side. I'm going to be very short because we're reaching the end of this webinar. So as some of you know, there was a first ever Faith Pavilion at a climate conference. The climate COPs are indeed, to my knowledge, the largest UN gatherings whatsoever that we have in this world, or have become the largest UN gatherings. So it was great to have an interfaith pavilion there with lots of faith engagement from a variety of groups. We were part of the core team as WA and helped facilitate this faith pavilion. And I dropped a link into the chat. There will be a reflection webinar tomorrow on some of the successes and outcomes of this faith pavilion. So if you're interested, this is in the context of the International Partnership on Religion and Sustainable Development part. You can observe that link. And yeah, the plan is for this year also to have the Faith Pavilion at the next COP, which happens in Baku, COP29 at the end of the year. But it's always a little bit of a challenge, because if the presidency changes with another host country, that does not necessarily mean that the same thing can be done again. And at the last COP, it was hosted by the UAE government and sponsored also, to be transparent here, by the UAE government, which for some organizations was kind of challenging at first to see, well, how will the UAE position itself? In hindsight, I can really say from the WA side, we didn't see any interference in the program planning or agenda planning there. So in the end, it was a good and fair thing to have this Faith Pavilion. So much from my side, and I think back to you, Dave, isn't it?
Thanks, Matthias. Thank you for being so brief as well. We're just about up with our time. We're due to finish in the next couple of minutes. So I'm not going to take questions, because I think if it would kind of be opening the floodgates potentially. What I will say is, if you've got questions, contact the people who spoke and who you want to question. You can probably find most of them via Google. If you're really stuck, then you can probably email me. You can probably get hold of my email from various sources or one of the others here, and we can put you in touch with the right person. But thank you all for joining us. This will be recorded, so if there's stuff you missed or others you know who missed it and would like to listen in, then let us know, and we will probably include a link in the next pollinator to find a way that we won't put it up on the public web, but we'll encourage people to listen that way. So thank you, everyone. It's going to be a busy year. There's lots going on in the UN space, in the Christian space, with all our organizations at the national level, at the regional and the global level as well. And what's, I think, so exciting is the way that we're seeing such good collaboration, that we're seeing different organizations from around the world, instead of sort of jostling and competing with each other, genuinely working together to try and see God's creation right at the heart of Christian involvement. So take care, everyone. God bless, and goodbye for now.
And thanks for hosting, Dave, and facilitating. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.